My 3-ingredient cherry chocolate dump cake recipe is easy and delicious. Although this dessert is great as it is, a few extra additions will take it to the next level. Let's go over the ingredients. For a 9x13 baking dish, you will need 2 21-ounce cans of cherry pie filling, one 15.25-ounce box of chocolate cake mix, and 2 sticks of butter. I am using unsalted, but you can use salted. Like I said, you really only need 3 ingredients for this dump cake recipe, but if you want to make it really delicious, I recommend adding to the cherry pie filling layer 1 tablespoon of lemon juice and 1 teaspoon of almond extract, and to the chocolate cake layer 1 teaspoon of instant coffee and 12 ounces of semi-sweet chocolate chips, 340 grams. Also, if you're using unsalted butter like I am, I recommend adding a dash of salt, about 1/8 teaspoon, to the filling or to the cake layer, doesn't matter, just a little bit of salt to bring out the flavor. As you can see, my baking dish is already buttered, so we're ready to go. But before we get started, I'm going to put my butter back into the refrigerator. For this recipe, it's really important that the butter stays cold. I will explain why later. Hence the name. The first step of this dump cake recipe is just dumping the cans of cherry pie filling into my greased baking dish. So here I'm literally just going to empty out the cans and spread out the filling as evenly as I can, and then I will bring you back. Now that the cherry pie filling is spread out, it's time to add some extras. Like I said, these are additional. If you don't want to add them, you don't have to, but I recommend it. 1 tablespoon of lemon juice, freshly squeezed, and 1 teaspoon of almond extract. We're just gonna combine them here and then sprinkle it in this way. The lemon juice is gonna help bring out the cherry flavor. I almost always add lemon juice to my fruit desserts. I feel like it really helps to make them more flavorful, especially berries like strawberries or blueberries. And almond extract is in a lot of cherry desserts. Botanically or scientifically, cherry trees and almond trees are related, so the almond extract will help to bring out the cherry flavor. I know it sounds kind of weird, but trust me, it definitely does. Now I'm just gonna spread those out a little bit. Like I said, we don't have to be perfect, but spreading them out as evenly as possible I think is gonna help. Now that the filling is the way that I want it, it's time to add the chocolate cake layer. So once again, because this is a dump cake, all we have to do is just dump in the cake mix. So I'm literally just taking the bag and sprinkling the cake mix over the top. You don't have to be absolutely perfect. I am going to go back and smooth it out later, but try to sprinkle it over as evenly as possible in the beginning. I think it's going to make your life easier in a couple minutes. Although I am using a chocolate cake mix, if you don't like chocolate, you could definitely do a white or a yellow cake mix, and I think that would be good. Before I smooth out the cake mix layer, I'm going to add in some extras. Like I said, 1 teaspoon of instant coffee, and then the chocolate chips, and I'm going to sprinkle in my salt now. I know some people do not like coffee, but even if you're not a coffee fan, I recommend adding it because coffee really brings out chocolate flavor, and I think it's really going to help in this recipe. Combined with a little bit of lemon juice, which brings out chocolate flavor as well, I think it's going to be great. I'm also going to sprinkle in the salt now. Like I said, it's about 1/8 teaspoon. If you're using a salt shaker like I am, I would make sure you hold the top so that it doesn't pop off and empty out into your cake. Also going to add the chocolate chips now. I think that as I smooth out the cake mix, I will smooth out and evenly distribute the chips as well. Like I said, I am using semi-sweet chocolate chips. I think this is better than, say, milk chocolate, because I think that would be too sweet, but if your preference is for milk chocolate, you can definitely use that as well. You can see this is going to be super chocolatey with the cake mix and the chips and a bit of coffee to bring out the flavor. To smooth out the cake later, all you need is a fork or a spoon, and then to just drag it across the top and even everything out. Notice I am not mixing. I'm not going like this. I'm literally just dragging the fork across the top, breaking up clumps as I go along. And just making sure everything is perfectly, or as close to perfect, somewhat perfectly even as possible. If you see that a lot of chips are clumped somewhere, you can move them around if you want, but honestly, I think it's probably going to be okay. I guess you could add the chips in later, but I wanted the chips to be mixed in with the cake mix, not just on the top, so that's why I added them before smoothing everything out. But if you want them to be on the top, then I would just do what I'm doing now, smoothing everything out, and then add the chocolate chips. Like I said, I'm not mixing, I'm just dragging across the top. I'm not packing down a lot either. I don't want it to be super dense or super tightly packed. Literally just dragging it across the top. Now that the cake mix topping is evened out and I'm preheating my oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, it's time to add the butter. This is probably the most time-consuming part of the recipe, but arguably the most important. So I'm going to take my butter and I'm literally just going to cut it into small slices, the thin slices, and then lay them right on top of the cake mix. So something like that. For every tablespoon, probably 4 to 6 slices. I'm literally just taking the butter and putting it on top. Let's see if see that maybe a little bit better. This is why I said it's really important to keep your butter cold, because warm butter is soft butter and it is going to be almost impossible to do this. So keep your butter cold, keep it in the refrigerator until it's time for this part of the recipe. Like I said, this is kind of time consuming, but it's really important because what's going to happen is that as the butter melts, it's going to soak down and then out and through the cake, and it's going to turn this cake mix topping into a chocolate crumble that's going to be crispy, crunchy, and it's going to be amazing. Up here there's a bit of a hole, so I'm just going to cut maybe a small piece. So I would say put them pretty close, the pieces of butter, put them pretty close together but not touching. I would say maybe 1/8 of an inch apart, something like that. A couple millimeters, using metric. You want them to be close enough to where the butter will moisten all of the topping, but you don't want them to be so close to where you need more than 2 sticks. I know you're probably asking Chef Parnell, is it possible to melt the butter and then pour it over the top? You could. There are people who do that, but I would recommend not doing that because it's really easy to accidentally put a lot here and none there, and once it goes in, if it's melted, that's it. I think one of the best ways is definitely just doing what I'm doing now. I have seen people put the cake mix off to the side in a bowl and mix it with the melted butter to form a crumble and then pour the crumble on top. I haven't looked into that too much, but some of the recipes, they look like the dump cakes turned out well, but I think this way might still ensure better coverage of the butter. I did have a viewer suggest freezing the butter and then grating it on a cheese grater or putting it into a food processor and sprinkling that over the top. That would probably work. So if you do the butter differently than how I do it, please let me know in the comment section how it turned out. I am going to finish this off camera because I know it's time consuming, and then it will be ready to put this into the oven. And I actually ended up using all of the butter, all 2 sticks, as you can see. The butter is as evenly distributed as possible. You can see where I thought there were some holes. I just put little pieces there to fill in the gaps. Like I said, you want to try and get good coverage, but it does not have to be perfect. I think this recipe is pretty forgiving. Now I'm going to put my dump cake into the oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit, uncovered. I will let you know for how long. I just pulled my cherry chocolate dump cake out of the oven. It was in at 350 degrees Fahrenheit, uncovered, for 1 hour, 60 minutes. And as it baked, it had an amazing chocolate flavor that spread throughout my whole place. This is going to be good. Like I said, this dump cake smelled amazing. It made my whole place smell like a deep, rich chocolate, and combined with looking great as well, I couldn't wait to dig in. And when I took the first bite, I knew that my 3-ingredient cherry chocolate dump cake recipe was a big success because it was absolutely delicious. First of all, the flavor. Although I could taste the sour cherry in the background, the chocolate flavor definitely dominated this dessert, especially with the addition of the chocolate chips and the bit of coffee. Speaking of the chocolate chips, I thought they took the texture of this dessert to the next level. As you can see in the video, they didn't all melt down totally. Most of them held their shape, so you could definitely notice them as you were biting into this. I thought the chips added a nice firm crunch that went very nicely with the softer crunch of the chocolate crumble, which went very nicely with the smooth fruit filling underneath. The crumble topping was probably my favorite part of this dessert. I thought it was really flavorful. It had a chocolate butteriness with a perfect amount of sweetness that was just so perfect in every way. And I think that the bit of coffee, along with the tart cherry filling underneath, helped to bring out the flavor even more. So like I said, everything worked together in perfect harmony. Flavor and texture aside, I also really liked the color combination in this dessert. Now that I'm holding the first slice up to the camera, you can see that the topping was this dark brown color that you would associate with chocolate, and the bottom layer had that bright red color that comes to mind when you think of cherries. And when put together, they contrasted each other perfectly. As I'm sure you can tell, I was really pleased with how my 3-ingredient cherry chocolate dump cake recipe turned out. Although it was my first time making it, I thought it had the perfect combination of flavor, texture, and appearance. But as always, there are a few things I would like to point out for people who are thinking about making this recipe. And the first one really isn't a complaint or a critique, it's just something to be aware of. Although the name of this recipe is a cherry chocolate dump cake, as I previously said, the chocolate flavor was definitely dominant.
In fact, when I shared this with a group of people, more than one person referred to this as a brownie, not a dump cake. That's not necessarily a bad thing. If you really like chocolate, you will definitely like this because I feel like everything just came together perfectly. The tartness from the cherries bringing out the flavor, the coffee bringing out the flavor, the chocolate not only in the cake mix but also in the chips. It just came together to make this the perfect chocolate lover's dessert. But if you're looking for something with a little more fruit flavor to it, this is not for you. If you want the flavor profile to be a bit more balanced, you might want to add another can of cherry pie filling for a total of 3. But in all honesty, I feel like chocolate is a very strong flavor and it's very difficult to make a dessert in which the other flavors can really truly compete against the chocolate if you don't want to sacrifice the chocolate flavor. So I think it's best to just accept this dump cake for what it is, as a chocolate dump cake with cherry in the background that acts more in a supporting role to bring out the chocolate flavor, and not as a cherry chocolate dessert in which both are equal. I just wanted to make that clear, but like I said, I really enjoyed this. Everyone who tried it said that it was absolutely fantastic. It disappeared in a matter of minutes. So if you're a chocoholic and you're looking for something that is quick and easy to make but has a lot of old-fashioned flavor, then this cherry chocolate dump cake is one you definitely need to try. And since it makes enough for a 9x13 dish, it would be perfect for a holiday like Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, 4th of July, Sunday dinner, or just because. If you make this, I know you'll love it, so let me know in the comments section what you think. As always, thanks for watching. See you next time.